Why electing honest leaders matters, avoiding WW3 and more. It may be tempting to pick a convicted felon pathological liar with no concept of reality to be the leader of the free world. It was hilarious the last time we did that. Remember the Four Seasons Total Landscaping press conference, or the time he suggested injecting bleach to cure COVID? Comedy gold. However, there may be some downsides to that decision that are worth discussing, even if Elon Musk tells you otherwise. And look, I get it. Politics can be about as appealing as a root canal performed by a rabid badger. It's messy, confusing, and frankly, most of us would rather watch paint dry. But the decisions these politicians make, well, they have a nasty habit of trickling down into our everyday lives, like it or not. So buckle up, buttercups, because today we're diving headfirst into the murky waters of why electing honest leaders actually matters. And no, this isn't some boring lecture from your high school civics class. We're talking about real-world consequences here, people. Things like avoiding a third world war, having a functioning economy, and maybe, just maybe, not having to sell a kidney to afford groceries. First up, let's talk about the big one. World War III. Now, I'm no Henry Kissinger, but I'm pretty sure starting a global conflict isn't exactly a recipe for a prosperous and healthy society. I mean, have you seen the price of gas lately? Imagine that. But with, nuclear fallout and the potential collapse of civilization as we know it, not entering a third world war has numerous advantages. Most notably, there is less of a chance of nuclear Armageddon. And let's be honest, nobody looks good with radiation burns. Trust me, I've seen the documentaries. Other benefits include longer lifespans, because who doesn't want to live to see the next season of Love Island? Less destruction of infrastructure. Potholes are bad enough without having to worry about falling into a crater left by a tactical nuke. And finally, not having to update history textbooks because, let's be honest, those things are already thicker than a dictionary written by Shakespeare. But in all seriousness, the threat of war is a very real and present danger, especially when you have leaders who are more concerned with stroking their own egos than engaging in responsible diplomacy. Electing leaders with a modicum of sanity and a smidgen of respect for international relations might just be our best bet for avoiding a global meltdown. I mean, I'm all for a good fireworks show, but not when it involves mushroom clouds and the end of humanity as we know it. So the next time you're tempted to vote for the candidate who promises to make your country great again by, I don't know, nuking a hurricane or challenging Putin to a shirtless wrestling match, just remember, peace is a dish best served not on fire. Now let's talk about something a little closer to home, the economy. Specifically, how a functioning economy, the kind where inflation doesn't make you weep openly in the cereal aisle, actually benefits the middle class. Middle-class working people can benefit tremendously from a functioning economy. When you're grocery shopping, you might notice the benefits of not having a 2,000% tariff added to the price of milk and eggs, because nothing says fiscal responsibility like making breakfast cost the same as a mortgage payment. This benefit of reasonable pricing can carry over to the cost of cars, computers, washing machines, and all kinds of goods. And look, I know what you're thinking, John. You beautiful, eloquent bastard, what about those jobs that went overseas? Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. Second, there's a reason those manufacturing jobs left the United States, and quadrupling the price of goods we all need might not end up benefiting the middle class. It's simple math, really. And while I failed algebra twice, even I can tell you that 4 is more than 1. Economists, those mysterious creatures who speak in tongues and can somehow predict the future of the stock market with the accuracy of a magic 8-ball, are mostly in agreement that a stable economy with reasonable trade policies is good for everyone. So the next time someone tries to sell you on the idea that protectionism and isolationism are the keys to economic prosperity, just remember, there's a reason why we don't barter chickens for iPhones anymore. All right, let's talk about Russia. Now, unless you happen to be building hotels and luxury condos in Moscow, or you're currently on Vladimir Putin's Christmas card list, chances are you don't have a whole lot to gain from Russia invading half of Eastern Europe. Further, those of you who are being paid large bribes by Russian oligarchs or who own cryptocurrency money laundering operations might have the exact opposite viewpoint. But for the love of all that is holy, Could you at least have the decency to be discreet about it? We're trying to maintain the illusion of a functioning democracy over here. The everyday Joe Six-Pack, however, probably doesn't have anything to gain from Russia's imperial ambitions. In fact, it's probably going to end up costing him, both in terms of higher prices for things like gas and wheat, and also in the form of increased military spending and the ever-present threat of, nuclear annihilation. So the next time you hear a politician spouting pro-Russia rhetoric, ask yourself, who stands to benefit from this cozy relationship? Because it's probably not the guy flipping burgers at your local diner or the single mom working 2 jobs to make ends meet. It's probably someone with a lot more money than you and a lot less conscience. Okay, let's talk about Elon Musk. Now, I'm not saying that the man isn't a visionary genius, because clearly he is. I mean, that the guy built a company that makes electric cars sexy and another one that's trying to send people to Mars. That's some serious Tony Stark level stuff right there. But should we be giving him trillions more taxpayer dollars so he can possibly finish the rocket that was supposed to take us to the moon earlier this year but currently can't even make it to outer space? Should we further subsidize Tesla self-driving cars that aren't self-driving as the stock price continues to balloon to even more ridiculous valuations? And look, I get it, space exploration is cool. Electric cars are good for the environment. But at what cost? While we're shoveling money at billionaires to fund their vanity projects, we're also drowning in student loan debt, struggling to afford healthcare, and watching our infrastructure crumble around us. This one is too personal, I'm not going to touch it. Finally, I'd argue that democracy can be a net good for society, and the majority of Americans would benefit from continuing to function as a democratic republic. I know, radical concept, right? But just hear me out. A dictatorship would have its benefits, such as the elimination of those annoying political phone calls, no need to remember to vote every 2 years, and fewer obnoxious Facebook posts from people you went to high school with. That almost makes it seem worth the loss of choice in leadership. You might even like the delusional narcissist who installs himself as dictator and be tempted to support him in that endeavor. However, what happens when someone you don't agree with takes the reins after him? Someone who decides that your right to free speech is inconvenient or that your religious beliefs are a threat to national security. Suddenly, those annoying political ads don't seem so bad, do they? You should consider what is more important to you, your favorite team winning this match or preserving your right to have a say in what happens in your life. Because once you lose that right, it's not easy to get back. Just ask the Romans or the Greeks or pretty much any civilization that's ever succumbed to tyranny. There are many other considerations, of course, but these were just a handful of reasons why it might be beneficial to not elect a convicted criminal, pathological liar, corrupt narcissist who tried to overthrow the government to install himself as the supreme leader. Look, I'm not saying that all politicians are bad. Some of them are actually quite lovely people with the best of intentions. But it's important to be informed, to ask tough questions, and to hold our leaders accountable, because the future of our country, and indeed the world, depends on it. Check back next week for our video about why war criminals might not make the best husbands. Spoiler alert, it involves a lot of screaming, crying, and accusations of war crimes. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and for the love of all that is good and holy, please vote responsibly.